This is your weekly investigation into all things legal. This is Law and Disorder on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
Yeah, welcome to Law and Disorder with our fake knockoff Law and Order sound there. Music. Danny, what do you think is our new open?
I am actually really impressed. I want to know who put that together. I know you have many minions working below you here. But
no, let's Matt and not Nina. Lauren did. Oh, I'm kidding. Sorry, Lauren. Lauren, can you play it again for Danny? Come on.
Yeah, one more time. Come on, encore it.
Let's hear it.
This is your weekly investigation into all things legal. This is Law and Disorder on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
Yeah, and every time it plays, we have to pay like $37 to Dick Wolf.
Is that true?
No.
I believe it.
But we were sampling. I'm sorry. Lauren did all the work on it. I was kidding.
She really did. I am
She's
really
mad at
impressed.
me. I'm sorry, Lauren. Lauren's not going to forgive me. I was joking. That's a running joke that we don't have. Okay, sorry. So, Danny, how are you, my friend? You're a new dad.
Dean,
Tell people.
You're
a new
great.
dad now. You had your first holiday with your new baby.
First holiday with the new baby.
Was it
Very
exciting getting new gifts for the baby?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a transition from, now as a father, if I want something, I'll just order it on Amazon myself.
Right.
Christmas is all about the baby. And the baby has no idea she's getting any gifts, but it's a lot of fun.
How old is the baby?
The baby is 8 weeks.
That's it.
This
is brand new. This is under warranty.
Warranty. That's right,
What is
Dean.
the warranty for the baby now?
The warranty, I think, is 9 weeks.
If you buy it with your Amex Platinum, does it go? Do you double it or something?
Unfortunately not. No,
Right,
I
so
wish
no
there was a
warranty.
warranty because there's all kinds of things going on. There's, not sleeping through the night. There's, these diapers
New
that
cost,
keep
right?
filling
I heard
up.
they're expensive.
Yeah, I mean, the baby expensive part isn't so bad, but it's the up all night and hungry every couple hours.
Is that
It's
you or
tough.
the baby?
Not me. I'm starving, but the baby's fine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the baby.
The baby sleeps right through the night.
Yeah.
Eats twice a day. Danny's up all night and doesn't stop eating. And how's your wife? She doing okay?
She's doing great.
She called in last time, just like, Daddy, come home. Your baby wants to talk to you.
That's right. That's right. Because I take any booking I can to get out of the house now to get away from the screaming.
Oh my
and
God!
that's
I wouldn't say that anymore in case Sarah's listening. Your wife.
yeah, I know you're right.
So Danny, there's Donald Trump's going to give the Wall of Lies speech at 9 p.m. in a little while. We are not. By the way, folks, we're not going to be on live covering because I'm not going to watch the piece of garbage speech live. I will watch. It's only 8 minutes. I'm sure I'll watch on video or I'll read the transcript. More importantly, I don't have to hear him. I will watch Chuck and Nancy, even if I don't get home in time. But there's a chance he might declare a national emergency. And even if he doesn't declare it now, when I read the vast powers of a president and the National Emergencies Act and things that, during the time of Trump, we've learned about a lot of legal things we haven't talked about before. The Emoluments Clause. Can you indict a sitting president? The idea we've all learned about Department of Justice memos. Can the president pardon himself? We've never discussed it. Now we have a new thing, the National Emergencies Act that was passed in 1976. You wrote an article today for NBC. In a nutshell, how vast are the president's power and how much discretion do they have, without even getting to statutes at first, just to declare an emergency?
You start with the primary document, and that's the Constitution. Unfortunately, the Constitution is very vague about the president's emergency powers and those powers vis-a-vis Congress and the judiciary. So the reality is all of the president's powers during an emergency, other than suspending the writ of habeas corpus, which does appear in the Constitution.
Search for show the reality.
Siri.
Hey Siri, as our
Siri
next guest.
just started talking for no reason. Why did Siri? Something you said. Did you say anything? Did you say?
Yes, I said, "Hey Siri, I don't know the answer to this question. Please help me."
That would be funny. And is Siri going to
For our
respond?
next guest.
Siri's not getting back to us. Siri doesn't know. That is so weird. Siri's on my watch.
Hey Siri, what are the sources of presidential power?
I'm not sure I understand. Siri, what are president's emergency powers? Let's see. Wait, let's see. Siri, what are president's emergency powers?
I found 20 results for...
She's just jammed up. She went to a loop.
She's
like, okay, so, sorry, Danny.
Yes, so
Siri's just rude.
So the president must turn to statutory sources of power. And I think the Brennan Center identified something like 136 different federal statutes that give the president that power. But stepping back, what happens when the president, what are the limits of a president's emergency powers, especially when he acts contrary to the will of Congress, which is what it appears we're looking at coming up very shortly. Well, the amazing thing to me, and the fact that the president is actually having a televised address, is that the president either is or is not a student of history. And it echoes 1952.
How about no?
Well, no, but then sometimes
his personal history.
He has a glimmer. Yeah, he has a glimmer of maybe anecdotal type history, and I have to wonder if he's even aware that the seminal case in the area of presidential power, Youngstown Sheet and Tube v. Sawyer, 1952. President Truman does an address to Congress and invokes emergency powers to try to take over the steel industry, to nationalize the steel industry because there's a threatening strike by the workers. And almost immediately, with record speed, and I mean that literally, record speed, the steel mill owners appealed that all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, I wouldn't say narrowly, 6-3, struck down this use of presidential power. And from that decision, what's amazing about it is that the 6-3 majority, each justice in that 6 wrote a separate concurring opinion. And to this day, we largely quote Justice Robert Jackson's opinion because he set up a 3-part analysis for whether or not the president is exceeding his power. And in the one that applies here, the third area is the one where the president acts without express authority of Congress. And what Robert Jackson did, and I'm going to summarize it, is basically say, for the most part, the president will lose, but not always. And we even saw in 2015 a presidential act squarely in Category 3 that was actually upheld by the Supreme Court. So the bottom line is this. When the president acts without the express or implied authority of Congress, Youngstown, the Supreme Court case from 1952 and the cases after it, stand for the idea that most of the time the court will strike down the president's action, but not always. And in that
there's no absolutes.
There are no absolutes, and Trump seems to know that on some level.
I don't know.
He just knows.
In his head, he's like, well, I own the court now. Here is Lauren there? Lauren, we're going to play Judge Napolitano earlier today, citing this exact case, Danny. You and Napolitano should have a podcast.
That would be
Cevallos
interesting.
and Napolitano. Here is Napolitano, clip number 6.
He will declare a national emergency to build that wall. Can he do that?
In a word, no. No, that's not me saying no, because the Supreme Court said no when Harry Truman attempted to do that. When there was a steel strike during the Korean War, he asked the Congress to authorize him to seize the steel mills and operate them against the strikers' wishes and produce steel for our troops who desperately needed it in the Korean War. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. Congress can do it. Congress can pay for the steel mills and operate them, but the president can't do it on his own. Stated differently, the Supreme Court has made it very clear, even in times of emergency, the president of the United States of America cannot spend money unless it's been authorized by the Congress.
So you and Napolitano there.
Pretty close. And I would say he is largely right. But you look no further than 2015, where you do have a case where Congress and the president did not agree. We were in Category 3, and by Category 3, I mean what's called the tripartite system set up by Justice Robert Jackson. And in that case, the executive branch wins. But for the most part, the Supreme Court, unless they find zero congressional authority in the area, will invalidate the president's use of emergency power when he does so directly in contravention to what Congress wants.
So assume tonight Donald Trump gives his speech and says, and CNN's reporting, sources close to Trump have explained to him that emergency powers would not be upheld. That's what CNN is saying right now in the Chiron, right up there. Probably won't work. Probably. But what if Donald Trump says, I don't care what you say, I'm going to do it. And what happens then? How does it get to the court system?
Here's his path. And it's so interesting because if you look at the Truman case, the Youngstown Sheet and Tube, the amazing thing is when you read these opinions, you look at the justices and who appointed whom, and you do see some correlation between the Truman-appointed justices and the Roosevelt-appointed justices. Don't forget, at the time in 1952, you had a court, because Roosevelt had been around so long, that was, I believe, 100% Roosevelt appointees. I could be wrong by 1 or 2, but 100%. I mean, I can't imagine that being the case nowadays, although Trump is on pace to replace the entire Supreme Court. But if this case, and if he does so, and the case speeds up to the Supreme Court, which it will, in a matter of days, then you have 2 very recent Trump appointees, and you would have a very interesting situation similar to Youngstown, where you have a number of Truman appointees. So you wonder how the court might rule. Although, let me say one last thing.
Okay, Danny, because I was going to give you a recent case that might be instructive. Are you going to say that same case?
No, I may not say the same case. I would say that you look at Justice Gorsuch, and Justice Gorsuch's behemoth, using his own words, has been the expanse or the expansion of executive power, particularly administrative state. So Justice Gorsuch could take a restrictive view of the executive's power, and these textualists like Roberts and Clarence Thomas and the folks that would read the authority of the president very strictly, because remember, the Constitution doesn't expressly give the president these powers; they are sort of implied through the penumbra. Now, that's a word from another case, but yes.
Okay, so Danny. That was a very reasoned explanation here. I'm
fired up about this one, Dean.
What concerns me, although it might give me hope a little bit at the same time. By the way, Justice Kavanaugh had his first opinion today. His first one.
Majority opinion? I actually didn't know that.
It came out. It was a unanimous decision. Beer is good. That's what it was. No, he did. I'm not kidding. He did on arbitration, which is an issue you love. It had to do with arbitration clauses. And they found for the company, against the company trying to get out of the arbitration clause, and you should read it because we've talked about arbitration before.
Yes.
Here's the reality, or at least might be instructive, but it's really risking a lot. There was a recent case we covered in the show. You weren't here, Ellie Mistel.
I'm starting to feel
you weren't here last week, Danny. You were busy.
I'm starting to feel very
right before
suspicious.
The holidays. The Supreme Court decided not to hear a case that the Court of Appeals had said Trump went beyond his powers as president by using an executive order to essentially rewrite a federal statute, which had to do with immigration, the idea of where you can apply for asylum. On the statute, clearly on its face, the statute says you can make an application for asylum anywhere. Well, Trump wanted to change that by executive order, say only at ports of entry. So you would think, though, this would be like 9-0 against Trump, literally rewriting a statute. 5-4 against Trump. It was Justice Roberts that went with the liberals to side with the lower court. So, meaning if you don't have Roberts, and you know, Ellie pointed the same point about textualists, they should have never done this. They should have been. Why would Thomas do this?
Me.
It does concern us that they are being more ideological in today's understanding of ideology and forget reading the law or the Constitution consistent with their philosophy that they were even confirmed on. You know, this is kind of odd. 5-4, and it took Roberts to be, in a way, forget left or right, but as an institutionalist, in a way, protecting the institution of the court, which I think is why he came down on the ACA decision the way he did, and 5-4, and upheld the ACA, because he was looking at a massive law and the impact on the nation and on President Obama. And I think just with the institution alone, he wanted to protect the court from being seen as too hyper-partisan.
That's right.
And I think that part of that. That's my view.
I think it's a really interesting thing you bring up, and I haven't had a chance to read that opinion yet, but that always concerns me because textualism itself is a very defensible position because it's premised on the idea that you don't think about right and wrong. You read the statute and read in whatever Congress intended the statute to mean. And in doing so, my idea about textualism is that it doesn't think about the parties or take sides or have bias. So if you hear a case like that, which sounds like a pretty easy case if you're a textualist, look at the words in the statute and what do they mean, then that concerns me, especially as if President declares a national emergency, then we will be very quickly at the Supreme Court. Very quickly at the Supreme Court.
This is worrisome. I mean, the rumors are, or the reporting is, he's not going to declare an emergency. He's going to try to still negotiate this. On some level, declaring an emergency was a way of saving face by saying, I'm declaring an emergency. We're going to fund it through leftover money from the military department that could be litigated clearly. So we're going to reopen the government now. We're going to have the Senate pass the House bill, go back to the government functioning, and I declare victory and let the courts do it. And if the courts ultimately rule against him, he can say, well, it was the courts, but, he can say to his base, it doesn't matter. You know, like I did everything I could do except get Mexico to pay for it. Danny?
Except, let me play devil's advocate,
Please
Dean.
do, Danny. That's why you're here.
Is it possible? I mean, well, the thing that seems like what a reasonable person might do, but the Trump side already had the opportunity to declare victory when they were given money for a border wall. It just wasn't as much money. No, I mean, yeah, it was not the amount of money that they wanted, and they wanted more. And then Lindsey Graham went on air and said, we want money for a border wall / border security / yellow caution tape / I mean, it was clear to me that they were redefining what it was they even wanted. And I think that's the concern. You know, some very intelligent guest said to me as an aside in the green room, what does each side even want at this point? It's not even clear.
Oh, it's very clear.
Well, I don't know if it is very clear.
You know,
I think
Lindsey
Trump
Graham said,
and
I tweeted out again today to remind people because it happened over the holiday. Lindsey Graham literally said, Trump's got to break the Democrats because if he doesn't break them, and he actually called for breaking, that's the term he used, breaking the Democrats, doesn't break them, 2019 is going to be horrible. And some of it's gamemanship because it's not a choice between open borders or a wall. Democrats, and oddly enough, Trump admitted to it Friday and upset people on Fox News, that Democrats also want border security. They just have a different vision of it. He actually said Democrats both want border security.
Right.
So when you start from that place, you've gotten rid of this false narrative that it's open borders, that's what Democrats want, and I want a wall. No, we both want border security. And to Trump's credit, as much as I hate to say this, he's made a discussion on border security that we've not had that's lasted for weeks now, but he's getting nothing out of it. If he really wanted border security, he could have it. It's just not the wall. The wall is not efficient with our tax dollars. That's the issue Democrats have. Already offering $1 billion. If he wanted another $1 billion and you're going to use it for, and there's a great article here, and I was going to cover it, but then we had Daniel Moody Mills calling because a member of Congress was supposed to be on and he got stuck in votes. Tonight there's votes. In fact, I saw members of Congress on with Erin Burnett before, and she goes, I know you have votes, but thanks for sticking with us for a few minutes. There are great articles here by liberal organizations talking about how you can increase border security without a wall, like renovating land ports and staffing them properly because they're understaffed, giving Border Patrol proven sensor and communications technology that they don't have the funding for now. This is off the charts. They don't have it. Quickening the process for training and improving, more screeners and polygraph administrators at the different ports of entry. When you think about it, if you really want to keep out drugs, and everyone on the left and right wants to keep out illegal drugs, undisputed, primarily they come through the ports of entry. They're coming through the cars and the trucks. They're hidden. So they're coming through and they're doing random selections. Well, if you had more guards, more officers, you can do more stops of more cars and weed it out from there. The same thing with undocumented immigrant population. 2/3 are visa overstays. Only 1/3 are border crossings, not exclusive from the South. Some are from the North. There's no doubt. CBS did a study. It came out. I talked about it yesterday. 140% increase of northern border illegal crossings in the last year. So it's from both the North and the South, primarily the South, I'm going to be clear, but from the North as well. There's ways of dealing with it without a wall. No one talks about a 5,000-mile wall in Canada border. That's 5,000 miles. It'd be outrageous because it makes no sense. It's not cost efficient for our tax dollars. So we could find it, but I want to be, look, I'm partisan. If the Democrats were being purely partisan hack garbage, I would call it out. I see them saying, we're giving you $1.3 billion for border security.
Yeah.
See how that works. Let's see what happens. If you need more money, but stop talking about the wall. And that's where we're stuck here. With Trump's wall or no government opening. That's ridiculous. There are Americans suffering. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back with more of Danny Cevallos on Law and Disorder. That's what we call our new segment made by Lauren.
Play me out,
It was
Lauren.
all Lauren. Can we play it again as we go out, Lauren?
Yeah, come on, play me out.
Please.
This is your weekly investigation into all things legal. This is Law and Disorder on the Dean Obeidallah Show. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show, exclusively on SiriusXM's Progress.
Yeah.
We're hip. We're cool.
It's like
we're like the kids.
No, we're not hip at all. It's horrible what we are. That reminds me of what's the movie New Jack City? Those movies. Do you remember the movie with Chris Rock playing?
Of course.
Was that New Jack City?
That was New Jack City. Yes.
CB40. That's right, CB40. But no, not the comedy one, the serious one.
Ooh. We have young folks in the control room. We're doing a fact check with them as we speak.
Who work here.
We have young children here.
So, Danny, I don't know what else to talk about.
They're
All
into
right, let me ask
Ricky
you.
Martin and the Macarena.
Tonight, the networks are showing Donald Trump on national TV. Is there any obligation legally for the networks to show a president when he asks for airtime?
None whatsoever. They don't have to. The reality is it often gets good ratings, but they have no obligation to. But I mean, in the ever-competitive world of television news, the network that doesn't cover something of that kind of importance really risks losing a lot of viewers because everyone's going to tune in to see what else is going on. So no, there is no moral obligation. It's something that they can cover. They don't have to cover, and there's no legal obligation to cover it.
In fact, in 2006, the networks covered George W. Bush's speech on immigration, and tonight is covering Donald Trump's speech. But in 2014, said no to President Obama's speech on immigration. And that's the reality of the world. Yet I think many people think there is some legal obligation because it's known as the public airwaves. We don't own these companies. They're privately held companies or publicly traded companies, but that it's known as the public airwaves. So somehow the president would have a right to go on. And that's not true at all. There's no basis.
No, it's similar to, well, this is it's especially SiriusXM because it's a private pay forum, right? I mean, you have a greater, that's the argument why the FCC doesn't regulate it because it's something you paid for. It's like buying, it's no different than if you cursed on your show, and I know you work clean, as we say. You, Brian Regan, and Jim Gaffigan all work very clean.
Jim was not always clean. I knew him when he was a newer comic.
Now, do not out him. That is
no, he wasn't filthy.
He
wasn't dirty, but he would curse. But then
they called Jim the Dice Man back in Newark.
No,
I know.
He wasn't that bad. No,
not quite like
it
that.
wasn't like that, but he would curse here and there.
Well,
but
Dean, I have to say, you, sir, are squeaky clean. Even knowing you socially, it is rare. I don't believe I've ever heard a curse word. And since you are from New Jersey, that is of an exceptional rarity. Most New Jersey kids I know, their third or second word they learn is F. Well,
it's patronizing bullshit.
Well, that's right.
How dare you?
I'm a patron.
All right, so there's no obligation, folks, just so it's clear. There's no law. There's no federal regulation. The networks have complete discretion whether to carry a president or not. So that's why it makes it so upsetting. They say yes to Trump to give a speech. Unless I thought perhaps they were going to give him the speech because they tipped him off and said he was going to declare a national emergency, which is newsworthy. But it's not. So what it really is ratings worthy in their view to have Donald Trump on.
But Dean, do you believe that Donald Trump will declare a national emergency? I believe there's a chance that he will.
I think there's a chance he will because I think every time anybody's predicted Trump, he's done the opposite. He doesn't care. His lawyers could be telling him, you can't do this. He'll do it because it gets some more press. This is his achievement to him is that more people talk about it. He declared an emergency, and now it's going to go to the court system. He loves this.
Here's why I believe he might, and it goes back to history. Undoubtedly, he does have a few folks in his circle who are schooled enough in constitutional law. I believe someone like Jay Sekulow or someone in his defense team maybe who are familiar with Youngstown will tell him, listen, the odds are maybe Scott Baio, maybe
Scott Baio advising him.
Exactly.
It's like, sit up, Mr. President. I'm in charge, and you can't really do that. He's like, what? I can't do that. Where's Kid Rock? I want a second opinion. Get me Kanye.
Have you ever been up for a part against Scott Baio in a movie, anything like that? There was never a room full of.
I'm not really an actor.
Okay.
I've done a few auditions. It just was never. I would get sent out for auditions to play the Arab guy, and everyone in the waiting room for casting thought I worked for the casting agency because I looked like the white guy, and they were all really brown. So I was never going to get cast, and I never got cast. I could have been in The Sopranos. That would have been my dream.
That would have been a good one. That's every
From
New Jersey guy's dream.
Come on,
of
Matt
course.
Italian. I could have been over there. Hey, how you doing? But Tony, Mr. Tony said, do this over here. But no. So, where were we? Talking
Anyway,
about Donald Trump.
so yes.
National
So I
emergency. Why do you think
I believe he might. I believe he might.
I agree with
because
you. I believe he might as well.
I believe, even though some have told him that he cannot, I believe he might, because one of the things Donald Trump time and time again loves to do is watch the chaos after he does something. And if someone has explained to him that, yes, if Congress opposes you, Youngstown and the cases that have followed stand for the proposition that you're likely going to lose, but there's still a glimmer of hope. Donald Trump, in his mind, thinks, hey, why not? It's free. The courts are free. We get to go to the courts. And if I lose, so what? It's no skin off my back. But if I win, oh, it's epic. I've changed constitutional law. And what better time to do it than with a couple of my appointees on the Supreme Court and a strong Republican team that is currently on the Supreme Court, even if he didn't appoint them.
Do you think maybe right now he's thinking, maybe if I can form a shell company and pay hush money to Nancy Pelosi, this all goes away? Because
I'm not even sure.
Usually my illegal stuff involves a shell corporation and funneling money secretly to women before an election. So this is nothing. We're going to do this legitimate. It's like Godfather 3, Al Pacino, like, by 2025, I'm going to be totally legitimate. This is...
yeah. It's almost like the reverse of that. It's the Benjamin Button of Godfather 3, right? We're going in reverse. I know.
I agree with you that I think that if they stun people tonight, if Donald Trump is guided by chaos and what his base wants, which I think, honestly, the latter is his number one telltale for what he'll do is what his base wants. His base wants this wall. I think he's got nothing to lose by saying, I declare an emergency. Let the court sort it out.
Exactly.
And to be pressed for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Exactly.
Maybe open the government up and everyone's talking about this emergency and we're all going through the National Emergency Act and different clauses of the Constitution. So I think that's a possibility. Speaking of the government shutdown, what's interesting is there's different human aspects. I didn't get to it tonight. I promise to get to it tomorrow. But other networks like Ali Velshi did a good job today covering the human impact of the shutdown. There's one, though, that doesn't get much coverage. That's the federal courts. They are running out of money. This is remarkable. Immigration cases right now, there's an article in the paper about a 61-year-old man from the Dominican Republic waiting for his day in immigration court since the 1980s because he couldn't visit his dying mother back home. And his trial was finally to come next week, but because of the shutdown, he might lose his court date.
That's right.
And immigration cases, unless they're emergencies, they're just putting them off, which is good and bad for certain people. So it's going to be, what happens if the government, like you get entitled in the Constitution to a speedy trial.
That's right.
For criminal case.
That's right.
So how does the tension work there? If they're running out of money for the federal courts, but you're a defendant and you demand a speedy trial,
there are two, not only speedy trial, but effective assistance of counsel become issues. Now, when it comes to speedy trial, there is some wiggle room both at the state and federal level. And unfortunately, it's one of the hardest things to explain to clients who have been arrested and they watch the clock and whatever the statutory time is in the state or federal system, that time elapses and they say, Mr. Lawyer, my time's up. I should be released, right? And I have to explain to them, well, not exactly, because the government sometimes gets the benefit of time that wasn't the government's fault. So, for example, if the defendant asked for, hey, we need a continuance on the defense to get a witness or something else, that time doesn't count against the government. Okay. So there are a number of things. So the bottom line is, as long as the government did everything it could, a court may find that the time hasn't run. But you're absolutely right. The other major implication is effective assistance of counsel. Let me give you an example. So you have the Public Defender's Office, but the Criminal Justice Act, the CJA Act, creates a system where if you have two defendants who have both robbed a bank, they can't both get the public defender. So the court appoints a private attorney and pays them hourly rates. Well, if you're not paying that attorney the hourly rates or paying for the experts or the other things they need to get ready for trial, it's impossible to say that that defendant has gotten effective assistance of counsel. And that's exactly the kind of thing that will overturn a conviction. You know, it's one thing to shut down a government office and people have to wait for a permit. But maybe I'm biased saying this because I'm a defense attorney. But the minute you start delaying trials, you run afoul almost immediately of constitutional protections. For example, the right to a speedy trial and the right to effective assistance of counsel. And that's with just a few court dates, because in many systems, in the federal system, you miss a court date and it has to be rescheduled. Well, there's a lot of other court dates waiting. That could be a month out. It could be a significant amount of time out. And these are the kind of things that start affecting criminal defendants' rights. And if you're prosecutorially minded, it starts threatening the prosecution of cases very quickly.
What's interesting is the court system, the administrative office of the U.S. court says, and this is stunning, folks, our federal courts only have enough money through January 11th, 3 more days. The entire federal court system, all 94 federal district courts around the country, and the higher courts, all non-essential workers might have to stay at home and only skeleton crews go in starting after January 11th. This is unreal because we're getting closer to the longest shutdown ever. I can't believe our federal court system is not immune to a shutdown. Yeah. Civil cases are just stopping. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
The only ones that are essential are going to be criminal cases that had to start, or there may be a key witness they're worried about, or perhaps speedy trials involved. Civil cases will stop. And for some people, though, they might not be, your liberty is at risk, but it could be compensation for horrific injuries, that you lose your court date and you can get rescheduled 6 months later, a year later.
A plaintiff could die. All kinds of things can happen.
So this has real life impact. I mean,
it's even worse than that, Dean, because you make the point that, civil cases stop, but the criminal cases are going on. In the federal system, those same judges hear the civil and criminal cases. So if you delay those civil cases, they're just backing up. I mean, they're not going anywhere. Exactly. They're just log jamming the system. And you're letting a trickle of criminal cases out to relieve the pressure. But when the government starts back up again, these already clogged courts are going to have even more cases on their docket. So the potential damage here is really, really significant. It's a real scary constitutional test.
It is, because say Donald Trump were actually to do this for a month or 2 months and say, I'm not going to fund this, and the Republicans in the Senate refuse to override a veto of Donald Trump, our entire federal court system could come to a grinding halt, except for a handful of essential criminal cases that they feel compelled to try. That will have an impact. It'll have an impact on human beings who have been wronged, and corporations, attorneys, and the list goes on. People who work in the support staffs, paralegals. There's economic impact. In fact, I didn't talk about this earlier in the show, but as of today, the estimates of how our government shutdowns affecting the overall economy, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch said that if the government doesn't open, just the shutdown so far, 17 days in, they're reducing the estimates for economic growth next year by 0.1%, a tenth. As it continues to go, it will drag down the GDP. And there's a point where it gets closer and closer to a potential recession, which is simply 2 quarters in a row of the GDP contracting. So we're already going to have a contraction because last year was good, but you saw near the end of the year a slowdown. We're going to have a contraction. You just need another contraction after that, and you've got a recession. And while a recession in words might not affect everyone, hearing about it affects consumers. And when the biggest component of our GDP is consumer spending, people go, hey, there's a recession. Maybe I shouldn't buy that watch or that car.
That's right.
But spend more money for restaurants tonight. Let's save our money. It starts becoming self-fulfilling. So Trump could have an impact on our entire economy, and it doesn't seem to care. I mean, forget politics. He doesn't, I honestly mean, a lack of empathy or compassion. It's just about him in a wall right now.
Doesn't seem to understand. He thinks very simply, and it's worked for him in the past, and he feels that if he makes these deliberate choices without a ton of pesky information, then things will work out as well as they have in the past. And it is amazing. All these things you just talked about are for a wall, for something that he could have declared victory on a number of times. He could have built half a wall. He could have built 10 miles of wall, had a big wall unveiling ceremony, and I think a lot of his base would have been happy with that. This is the easiest issue he could have declared victory on many many times.
He gave them everything, promises made, promises kept. Bigotry, racism, sexism. He gave them all of that. What more do you want? I mean, come on. He defended white supremacy at Charlottesville. How much more do you want? How much blood can you take from this guy? He's done everything you want. I mean, he's attacked Dr. Christine Ford. He's sided with men like Rob Porter, his aide, who beat his ex-wives. How much more do you want, Trump supporters? He's given you everything. Every vile thing in your little dreams of celebrating cruelty you could ever want. He's delivered. How selfish are you? Danny? Danny won't talk.
How am
Danny's
I
not
burned
going to
in
respond to that one.
Yeah.
Danny, no, Danny, I knew you weren't going to respond to that because it wasn't legal and it would get you in. So we won't talk about that. Wait, here, Aaron's saying Trump is running America like a game show. Let's talk to Aaron. Aaron from San Diego. How are you, Aaron?
Good. How you doing, Dave?
Fine. You're on here with Danny Cevallos, attorney to the stars. So what's going on, Aaron? What do you think about what Trump's doing now as we get close to his Trump wall of lies speech coming up?
All right. Actually, I'm listening to Law and Disorder, man. I love it. I love the show, Dean. I listen to it every day. But
Thank you.
I listen to Danny, and I hear him talking. I can hear he can deal with all Trump's bullshit, right?
Right.
The rest of us can't. The rest of us are not high-priced lawyers, Danny.
Right, Danny.
What he's doing to the country is bullshit. Dean may not cuss. I'm a regular American. I will.
I'm a regular American. How dare you, Aaron? I'm kidding.
No, but you're right. You're right, Aaron. Dean does not curse, and it's very creepy.
Curse.
It's very suspicious.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
But the rest of us out here living in America, we will feel the effects of the government shutdown.
Of course.
Regular Americans, not the rest, high-priced lawyers and.
Wait a minute. What did I do?
You snooty elitist lawyers like Danny Cevallos who make his living from being on basic cable.
I curse.
The explanations that you're giving brings, just the perception of a high-priced, rich lawyer. Whatever Trump's doing, you shouldn't worry about it. It's just Trump having a game show. He is kind of president, but you just deal with it. That's bullshit.
Right. No, you're absolutely right, Aaron, because this is real people we're talking about. In fact, I talked about this on Joy Reid's show on Sunday when I was on that food stamps are going to run out of money at the end of the month. There are 20 million children, folks, 20 million children that depend on food stamps. That means children will go hungry because of Donald Trump. 20 million food stamps for children every month, and they are running out of money for these kids. And Trump does not care whatsoever.
He could explain that somehow, I think.
I'll talk to the rich Dan. He's going to bill me for this. All right, Aaron. Nice talking to you, my friend.
Aaron, I got to send you a bill for a few minutes.
All right, let's take a quick break. Come right back.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Voting is the most important civil right of our era because the right to vote preserves all other rights. It's not the Second Amendment. It's not guns. It's voting.
SiriusXM Progress.
New perspectives, important voices, influential ideas. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're here live with my friend Danny Cevallos. Stormy Daniels, yes, that Stormy Daniels, tweeted, clearly trolling Donald Trump about his speech tonight at 9 p.m. saying, and I'm reading from her Twitter handle, her feed, "If you're looking for anything even remotely worth watching tonight at 9 p.m., I will be folding laundry in my underwear for 8 minutes on Instagram Live." So if you don't want to watch Trump and you want to watch Stormy Daniels fold underwear, there you go, folks. I'm not recommending it, just reading it because I find it funny.
She's got a good sense of humor. I got to say, that's
Matt,
funny.
my producer, he's going to watch it. So, my friend, Danny, my friend, Habibi, let's talk about a lot of legal stuff happened.
Yalabina.
All right, so let's talk about today a Russian lawyer who was at the Trump Tower meeting in June 2016, the famous meeting which I think will be significant and integral when we finally get a report.
Fair
In
assumption.
any event, she was charged with obstructing justice, but not specifically relevant to what Robert Mueller's case. Tell us, pronounce the lawyer's name, which you can and I can't, and what's going on here.
Natalia Veselnitskaya.
Very nice.
And she is, as you said, the Russian lawyer who is supposedly was at the Trump meeting. I think we can safely say that we think she was, the 2016 Trump Tower meeting. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice, she was representing, and I use this term with air quotes because I don't believe, I could be wrong, I don't believe she was admitted to practice law in the United States either as an attorney or in some what we call pro hoc capacity. And a lawyer can sometimes be admitted just for a particular case. But no matter what, you have to be a lawyer in good standing in the United States. And I don't believe it was that. I believe she was basically helping this company that the U.S. government had brought a civil forfeiture case against. And what a lot of people don't realize is, simply put, drug dealer uses speedboat to transport drugs. Drug dealer gets caught. The U.S. government can seize that boat and sell it and do whatever they want with it. So that's what civil forfeiture is. So anyway, the government went after this big company, civil forfeiture case. Veselnitskaya apparently assisted to some degree in preparing filings. The Mueller team, I'm sorry, not the Mueller team, the Southern District of New York brought charges against her for obstruction of justice, false statements, and what happened consequently is what I think will happen is that we might see in the future overtures or an agreement to enter into some cooperation agreement with the government, because the indictment, even though it facially has nothing to do with the Trump Tower meeting or anything to do with Trump anything, ultimately may just be a crowbar that the government uses in order to extract a plea agreement and cooperation from Veselnitskaya.
So we're all guessing at this point. But, Robert Mueller, and I'm glad when Trump's not railing about it and it's just quietly being done, because that's what investigations should be. They should be quietly done, and when they're completed, they give a report, and in this case, we go on from there. Any sense from your experience of years of laundering Russian money? Any sense, though, where we
high-priced lawyering, as Aaron says.
I love these bizarre things, like all these rumors that February the report's coming out. It's just people just making up a month. Why would it be next month? Why? I don't know if you saw that. There was like rumors and articles. February. Why February? I have no idea. I have no clue where we are. Would you have any sense in an educated or somewhat educated guess here about where we are in the process, when we might get a report?
Before a federal judge extended the grand juries for 6 months, the federal grand jury for 6 months, just a few days ago,
That's a
for
good
all
point.
of December, and even in the beginning of January, I have been saying that even though we've heard reports that the Mueller team might be wrapping up by February, it doesn't seem logical to me, if for no other reason than this is the largest white-collar investigation in the history of white-collar investigations. You just had several court filings in which you had huge redactions, and documents are still being sealed when they're filed. All of these point to an ongoing investigation, and the government does not feel hurried when it conducts its investigations, because for them, the prime objective is to make a case that stays made. They don't like to lose, and they don't lose that often. They win 95% of the time.
Right.
And so the government is not going to move unless it's a move has been vetted several times by higher ups. That's why they don't make a lot of mistakes. So the idea that it is possible that Mueller could be wrapping up by February, but realistically, it just doesn't seem that they could possibly be
But hang on
finished
for
by
1
February.
second, because you mentioned something that was very important we didn't cover on the show. The extension of 6 months of the grand jury.
That's right.
Why? First of all, explain why there was a limit to the grand jury time, and then what do you think the significance of the extension is?
They run, this kind will run for, I think it's 18 months, and then it can be extended for 6 months thereafter. I think those are the rules. And it's pretty routine, but it also indicates that there's still more to be done. So I wouldn't read, it's not something that's extremely rare. Quite the contrary, it happens fairly often. But it also indicates, as I've suspected, that there's more to be done. Yeah, it's possible Mueller could wrap up by February, but I just
would you
don't think so.
extend the grand jury for 6 months if you were about to wrap up? That's what I'm really getting at.
Right. I would say no, but in an abundance of caution, if they thought they had a month's worth of work left, they might do it, and then just have some by overkill. But I just caution folks that every time they turn someone, that's a new witness giving new information. So they may have gone down a whole new avenue with the turning of even Michael Cohen's recent cooperation, even Michael Flynn appearing in court and saying, well, I haven't cooperated in this other case. Well, let's come back and you'll get sentenced after you do cooperate. And those are all new events that could lead to new cooperation. And every time that happens, that's a whole new seed that plants and sprouts, and the government goes down yet another path.
So let's take a quick break, come back with more of our friend Danny Cevallos in our weekly segment now called Law and Disorder. We gave it a name every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Be right back.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. The countdown to the speech I won't be watching, called Trump's Wall of Lies, coming up in a few minutes. And then Chuck and Nancy with their little show. Danny, we only got a minute left. So
we only have a minute, Dean. I got to tell you, I love talking your comedy career during the break. And in honor of that, I would like to do my rendition of Gilbert Gottfried's The Aristocrats as we go out to
the long, dirtiest joke ever told in the history of
a man walks in. I can't do Mike Gilbert. Well, thank you, Dean. Thank you for having me.
Gilbert, we have the same agent. My agent does impressions of him. He'll say, like, Gilbert called me, can you get me less? That's too much money. That's my best Gilbert impression. How was that, okay?
That was pretty good. Better than I can do.
All right. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow night, who knows? Maybe Congressman Ro Khanna will be on tomorrow. Votes tonight in the House kept them there. And I think it's going to be happening early in this new Congress for a while. But have a great night. Be back tomorrow. All new live show. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obadala. Facebook.com/Dean of Radio. Have a great night.
argument over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall, a wall he always promised Mexico would pay for. The fact is,